This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Through Patti's own personal journey, she has developed a unique approach to helping people regain their mental and physical health. There's a tendency for many of us to take life a little too seriously. Our tendency is to push ourselves too hard, believing that once we gain that new job, buy that bigger house, let go of those extra 15 pounds, or finally end our physical pain, we will be happy. We all want new things in our lives. But what if we could obtain them by being fully grateful for what we already have? Patti believes happiness is a choice rather than a destination. It might even be a behavior. The choices we make each day determine how we feel and behave. Our beautiful human experience includes both moving mountains and resting, and recovering one day at a time. Do you dream of having all the health, happiness, and abundance you've always wanted? Would you like to gain more emotional intelligence and gain more control over your life? This episode will inspire you to reflect and take action toward your wellness and greatness. Valeria interviews Patti Norris. She is a registered massage therapist, certified life coach, and faster EFT practitioner specializing in the resolution of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain. Through her own journey with anxiety, depression, and chronic pain, along with treating hundreds of patients throughout her career with chronic stress-induced illness, Patti Woodworth Norris realized the profound impact that stress physiology has on all aspects of health. By rewiring her brain and rebalancing her nervous system, she was able to free herself from anxiety, depression, chronic pain, and many other physical symptoms and stress patterns. She has since helped many clients do the same with diverse health issues, traumas, and self-sabotaging patterns. Patti is now a firm believer that everyone with a chronic health issue will benefit from neural retraining, and in many cases, it is critical to healing. Meet Patti at getwiredforwellness.com and pattinorris.com. Here's the interview with Patti Norris.
In your own words, who is Patti Norris?
Wow, what a beautiful question. I am a mother. I am a wife. I am a pet parent.
Yes.
I am a passionate life coach and practitioner of all things neuroplasticity. And I am a woman, in midlife who is just starting to feel like I'm figuring some things out. I guess, do we ever figure it all out? But I feel like, I'm starting to marry who, the spiritual aspects of who I am with the physical aspects of who I am, and understand those interactions, and sort of consciously and deliberately starting to create my life instead of having it be a result of all of my programming. So I'm all of those things.
Yes. What's not to love about all that, especially not living a life out of programming, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, talk to me. I guess I'll open with this question. That will be my second follow-up question. How did you come to these understandings? I'm sure it was not linear, but I would love to know the story.
Yeah. Well, Valeria, I had a pretty typical upbringing. I had a relatively good upbringing, I would say. And I think I fell into sort of the Western version of what you're supposed to want. The white picket fence, the 2 children, the dog, the husband, all of those things. And I stepped into a beautiful manifestation of all of that. No regrets around any of that. But in my early 40s, my hormonal situation started to change. I started to knock on the door of perimenopause. And I think a lot of the stress that I didn't even really fully understand was present in my body and in my mind kind of came to a head. And I had what I would describe as a health crisis. In old school language, we might have referred to it as a nervous breakdown. And that was the beginning of this huge awakening for me. I had been dealing with some pain in my body in an on again, off again way for probably the better part of 10 years at that point. And right around the time that I had this sort of running into the wall with my health moment, I experienced anxiety, I experienced depression, and then the pain that I had been sort of dancing with off and on turned on in a chronic way and then didn't turn off. So it was it was a really difficult time in my life, but it didn't end up becoming the catalyst for what I really feel is probably the best time in my life. It's so interesting. So much of our the beautiful things in our life can come out of struggle, right?
True.
Yes.
That is true. That is so true.
Yeah. So that's
yes,
so that health crisis is sort of what prompted me to go in I wouldn't say it's an entirely different direction in my life, because I had done body work for 20 years at that point, helping people. But it kind of took on another form at that point when I really started to understand on a deeper level how much our emotional state and our mental state impacts our physical state. Yes, and I had been seeing glimpses of that, doing body work with people for a couple of decades. But interesting also how you can sometimes notice those things in other people, but you don't see it clearly in yourself.
So true. Yes, so true. Gosh.
Yeah. So I didn't have any choice but to see it when my health really kind of fell apart.
Wow.
Yeah.
How interesting to think about pain from this perspective. And I have, of course, heard about it and interviewed so many people about this. And
yes,
I'm sure I have experienced that myself, but I didn't make that connection. And I think that we usually don't. So I wonder why.
Well, I think the way I like to think about this is that our bodies will express the emotions that maybe we haven't been able to express in other ways. Right? They will reflect the emotions that maybe we've experienced around a difficult experience. We've had a difficult experience. There's an emotional reaction that happens to that experience, and there's energy that's generated around that, and if we don't have the ability, or as children, if we don't have role models around us to help us process that emotional energy in healthy ways, then it tends to get almost stuck in our bodies. And I think the best analogy I can think of to describe that is the simplest one that I think really beautifully illustrates it is, if you imagine yourself as being like an empty glass as a child, and every time something difficult happens in your life, there's a drop of water that falls into the glass. If we are not regularly pouring water out of the glass, then at some point it's going to overflow, right? And I think that's when our nervous systems become overwhelmed and we get sort of stuck in a chronic fight, flight, or freeze response. This is when we can be very prone to developing chronic health problems.
Yes.
So, yeah, in my experience, there's almost always an emotional aspect to this, even though maybe that's not the way Western medicine wants us to think about it.
Yeah, right. When I educated to think that way, when I inspired, right, to think that way from that perspective of conventional medicine. But that's very much an open topic and an open secret when it comes to spirituality. We talk a lot about these things.
Yes.
But within the psychology and the work you do as you're a registered massage therapist, certified life coach, faster EFT practitioner, specializing in the resolution of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain. I'm reading the labels.
Yes.
So the audience knows what exactly you do.
Yeah, what I do. Yes.
So I guess the question that comes to mind immediately is, which it came before from talking to other people, suppressing and repressing. I think they're two different concepts. So do we have control over these mechanisms of suppressing, denying, and repressing emotions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love that question. I think, my immediate reaction to that is it is necessary as a human, living in community with other humans, for us to be able to suppress some of our emotions. Right?
True.
Because if we didn't have that ability, then we'd all be walking around, kind of in a really irrational, inflammatory state potentially, and society would not function very well. Right? So I think we have to be able to suppress a certain amount of what we're feeling. We can't just go and dump it on everyone around us all day long, right? But I think there's for most of us, there's a sort of point of saturation, I guess would be a good way to think about it. Whereas if there's too much emotional energy stored in the nervous system, in the body, then it becomes you're not able to cope with it anymore, and it overwhelms the system. It is a naturally occurring thing. We do need to be able to do it, but we also need to recognize when we're doing it too much, and we need to find healthy ways to discharge some of that emotional energy and bring our nervous system back into a better state. Yeah.
Yes. I love to hear that. The idea of normalizing what is seen as not normal, right? The expression of emotions. I agree.
Yes.
But what comes to mind for me, because again, my perspective is a spiritual one. It's not really a scientific one.
Yes.
I do now understand more than any other time in the history of my own life that my emotions, they often came from thoughts, and thoughts came from belief systems.
Yes.
So the more I became aware of false belief systems, almost like I came to the point of not having belief systems in a sense of not even wanting to have them. I don't know if that's possible, really, right? to navigate this reality without belief systems, but I'm very much.
I think it's possible to become acutely aware of them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Awareness is so powerful. Because if in the moment when a belief that's not serving us becomes activated, if we're aware of that, then we can choose to, let it guide us or not let it guide us.
Yes. Yeah. That's it, Patti.
Yeah. Awareness.
Right. That is the key. Yeah. Because it's interesting how, in my case, I really want to kind of be more, live a life that's a lot more in the moment and present and not really informed by the past and whatever programmings are here. But it's not easy, right? So awareness would be the key. And that's probably what I'm getting at.
Yes.
So I don't know if I call it natural, this process of releasing emotions, because I think it would be it's a lot more natural to me to realize the interconnectedness of everything and kind of see the other things as myself. So it's the same ground, the same essence. So it's easier to be kind to myself and others coming from that perspective.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree 100%.
And that really helps with emotions. It has been my case.
Yes.
The nervous system, everything's much calmer because of it.
Yes. Well, yeah, when we recognize our commonness, right? That we all kind of, on a spiritual level, came from the same place and ultimately will go back to the same place. There's more openness to each other, I think, if we can lean into some version of that.
Yes, right. And that's true. Some version of that, because we can't really, this is not something that, it's not easy to kind of realize it. And then it's actually much more challenging to embody that. in day-to-day moment, dealing with people and situations, right? Circumstance, problems, and all that.
Well, we don't live in we live in a sort of dualistic reality, right? We all see ourselves as individuals, which we are on some level, but we're all interconnected too, which is beautiful and challenging and all of those things.
Right. Is that your idea of spirituality? Is that how you understand the world spiritually?
Well, yeah, I think I'm a big lover of Michael Singer's work. I'm a big lover of Michael Singer's work. I'm not sure if you know who.
I don't know who he is. Michael Singer.
Yeah.
Who is
so he's a spiritual teacher, meditation, yoga, sort of Buddhist teacher, I would say, would be the best way I would describe him. But yes, he's very much of the mind that he's a beautiful combination of science and spirituality, would be the best way to describe it. I love the idea that, and I use these as sort of guiding principles in my life. We all, we're all stardust, right? We all came from stardust. We will all return to stardust. It's an utter miracle that any one of us is even here on this only planet that we know of that can support life the way we understand it, right? And the statistical likelihood of any of us being here is essentially, zero. And yet here we are, right? On this planet with its plants and its flowers and its animals and just all this incredible beauty and variety. And we get to have this experience. That's kind of where I hang out spiritually.
Yes, which very much resonates with me. Yes, I call it the impossible. This is an impossible experimental experience.
Right.
Which we call life, right?
Yeah, there's nothing I love better than a big, big open starry sky.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Yeah, the ultimate place to ground, right? That's kind of, from a spiritual perspective, that's where I sort of hang out.
Yes. That's a lovely image. I was just kind of visualizing that now. So there's something on your website. We'll go back to the topic of retraining the brain for chronic health issues.
Yes.
But before that, I did read something on your website. You wrote, I would like to suggest that happiness is not a destination, but more of a choice, or maybe even a behavior. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that. That caught my attention immediately.
Well, I think I guess the example I would give of that, and this is an ongoing, practice for me, when you wake up in the morning, you have the option of letting your brain, which is sort of a natural thing that your brain wants to do, go back to everything that happened yesterday that you wish had been different, and go back to focusing on all the challenges you're going to face today. All the things that you are sad about or angry about. And that's a survival response, right? That there's a reason our brain wants to do that. It's trying to protect us and keep us alive, right? But we have the choice to either sink back into that default mode, back into that sort of survival part of our brain, or alternatively, we can recognize that that's what's happening and choose to focus on things that feel better. Gratitude for the beautiful soft sheets I'm sleeping on, for my dog laying on my feet, for this my partner who loves me that's laying beside me, the fact that I have a fridge full of food, and I can choose to focus on all of those things. So I think it's very much an exercise in where are we choosing to put our focus? Are we focusing on everything that's not the way we would like it to be? Or are we focusing on the things that we are grateful for and what we'd like to create more of in our lives? Right. And that's a choice, and our thoughts create chemical reactions in our bodies. Right. So if we can recognize, my brain wants to take me down that rabbit hole of everything that is not the way I would like it to be, but I'm going to practice shifting in a different direction. And in so doing, I'm going to be creating the production of chemicals that feel good. right? I'm going to be producing more oxytocin. I'm going to be producing more serotonin. I'm going to be producing more dopamine, versus if I let my survival brain run the show, I'm going to be producing more stress chemicals, right? So it is very much a choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When you understand the mechanics of how it works. Yeah, and there's a programming aspect to that, kind of circling back to what we were talking about earlier. We all have programming, neural programming that we have downloaded into the hard drive between our ears over the course of our lives. And a lot of that, once again, is going to be out of an attempt to keep us alive, is going to be skewed towards the negative, right? And often people will become very frustrated with themselves. They'll feel like, I'm sabotaging myself. I don't know why I can't break these habits. I don't know why I can't create change in my life. We need to understand that our brains, they just want to keep us aligned with what they downloaded to be true.
Yes.
Right? Out of a desire to keep us safe, which is really all about love, isn't it? I mean, our brain's trying to keep us alive.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it loves us.
Yeah. Life loves life. Yes.
So
in all aspects. Yeah.
Even those behaviors that can feel self-sabotaging, and why can't I change this? Why can't I break patterns of addiction? Why can't I stop, sabotaging myself in all different areas of my life? Well, it's because your brain wants to keep you with what's familiar, with what it knows, right? Because it feels safe. It feels safe to stay there.
Right. The familiar. Yeah.
The familiar. Yeah. It's so interesting how our brains work. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah. It is. Absolutely is. And it sounds to me like this is the work of healing, of course, and it starts with self-awareness, as you mentioned earlier. But for me, it was exactly that. I couldn't really find those options. Of course, I had the choice, but I couldn't see them.
Right.
The option of doing this or doing that.
Right.
So you say that it's much more difficult in the case of people with childhood trauma, like my case.
Yes.
And some people with personality disorders too. I noticed that it seems like it's a real challenge for them to recognize anything that's wrong with them.
Well, and it really goes back to that programming, right? I mean, essentially the way that works, Valeria, is that you can kind of think of us when we're born. It's not literally that we're a blank slate, but we're sort of like a computer that has no programs loaded on it yet, right? We're born into these environments where we have caretakers that have their own emotional baggage, they have their own problems, and we have experiences. And from those experiences, we learn who we are and how the world works and our place in the world. And those childhood experiences from birth up until the age of 7 or 8, the brain has essentially no filter to be able to discern or think critically about what happens. So we download all the data around those difficult experiences. And of course, unfortunately, the difficult ones take up more real estate between our ears than the positive ones do because of survival, right? Because of our brain being focused on survival. So all of that data just gets downloaded onto the hard drive, and it becomes just like software that gets loaded on the hard drive of your computer. And the computer can only run the programs it has, right?
Of course, yeah.
It can't run. So if we learn that the world is not safe, and that is the belief system, that is the program we have downloaded, it's going to be very, very difficult for us to behave in ways that reflect that the world is safe. Right. So it's very much a childhood programming challenge that most of us are trying to overcome, which is where the power of this brain retraining and using memory reconsolidation as a neuroplasticity process can be a real game changer for people. It definitely was for me, and it is for my clients as well. It's an incredibly powerful process that allows us to literally rewire those neural pathways in our brain that are keeping us stuck where we don't want to be.
Yeah, what a wonderful technology and invitation, isn't it?
Yes.
What is the process like, Patti?
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful process. It's definitely one that's a little more easily demonstrated than it is explained. But essentially, the memory reconsolidation piece of this is based on this understanding, like the memories that we have from earlier in our lives, and particularly the really difficult ones, right? Because the difficult memories have a lot of stress, have a lot of those sorts of resources attached to them. And the brain prioritizes that in an attempt to help us stay alive, right? So the memories, Valeria, of those experiences really act like the programs. Okay. So what we've discovered in recent years is that our memories, and this is the first time I heard this concept, I have to be honest, my mind was a little bit blown by it, but our memories are what we've discovered, what neuroscientists showed us, are often not accurate representations of what happened earlier in our lives.
Yeah, it's the interpretation, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and not only that, but we actually, every time, and this is a naturally occurring process that happens to all of us all the time, we just don't necessarily realize that it's happening. Every time we go back and revisit a memory from the past, our brain updates it slightly according to the emotional state that we're in when we go back and think about it, right? How much stress we're under, the context that we're going back and revisiting it. So the best way, the analogy for that is, I don't know as a child, if you ever played the telephone game. Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Telephone game. I think I did, but I don't remember exactly how that went.
The children sit in a circle, and the teacher whispers something into one child's ear.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And then it makes its way around the circle, and then 99% of the time, by the time it gets to the end, it doesn't all resemble what it started off as.
Yeah, true. Yes, I remember.
So
that.
This is essentially, we do this with our memories.
Wow.
So it's a naturally occurring process that we just know how to do innately. So once we discovered that this is how the brain works, the question then became, well, if we innately know how to do this and we're doing it all the time anyway, would it not make sense to use that ability of the brain to do this, to update those memories in a way that serves us?
Yes. Right.
Right. So to not only remove the negative emotion that maybe we have stored, within us around those experiences, but also to sort of rewrite the story essentially, so that subconsciously we're now carrying nicer resources around inside of our heads. Right. So this is the process. When I was first exposed to it, it's a little bit it can be challenging to wrap your head around it, but if you'd like, I can give you an example from my own personal story of how impactful this can be.
Yes, please.
So when I was in university, I had an experience my first year where I had experienced a date rape. And my brain, in all its beautiful wisdom, I went completely amnesic about it. I didn't remember that it had happened. And around 6 months later, I was in a bar with my now husband and some friends. And the young guy that had done this to me walked into the bar. And my brain, all of a sudden, boom, I was right back in it. Right. I was having flashbacks and I was hyperventilating and I was crying and shaking I had a full nervous system reaction to seeing this individual. So, that over the next, I guess, the better part of 3 decades of my life, that was something that I was trying to navigate around. And it would show up in obvious ways at times in my relationship with my husband. And in hindsight, I can see that it was showing up in other ways in my interactions with all the men in my life, as well as just sort of life in general, So the good news here, the beautiful punchline to this story is that when I was going through the training to do this neuroplasticity work, I received a session from one of my colleagues on that experience. And I was able to release a lot of the pent up emotion around it. And we were able to kind of essentially rewrite the story so that even though, Valeria, I still know that happened to me, right? I'm not in denial about it. I consciously know my subconscious now has a different movie around that experience. Okay. So I came home from this training that I was at, and I had an experience where I was having a conversation with my husband around something that would would cause me to be very defensive and or shut down. The communication would become very stilted, and I would just sort of go inside myself and shut down. And I noticed, we were talking about something that would normally be very uncomfortable for me, and I was grounded and I was calm and I was able to participate like a grown-up in this conversation. It was astounding to me. And the way that rewriting that story has impacted my life has spread out in so many different directions, in so many ways. I think my nervous system experienced a major upgrade in terms of getting out of the chronic stress state as a result of doing that work. And I also I'm much less defensive. I'm much more open. I'm much more grounded. It's just been phenomenal, the impact that had on my life doing that work. So, and clearly you and I are just meeting, and I'm here sharing my story with, obviously lots of people.
Yeah.
And I'm not at all uncomfortable sharing that story.
Right.
Right. So
that's a statement of healing.
Yeah. So that's the potential of this memory reconsolidation work, how impactful it can be in someone's life.
Yeah. It very much sounds like it. What's not to love about it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry for you going through a horrible experience.
I appreciate that.
I don't watch TV, and I just...
Right, I understand.
Because I visualize everything. It's almost like it's happening in front of me, and then my body starts to sweat too.
Yes, and you know what, Valeria? I was like, I used to be the same. I no longer am that way. I'm very conscious and deliberate about what I expose myself to, just because I know that I'm emotionally intelligent enough to know that there's nothing good that comes from exposing ourselves to stuff that is jarring and unnecessarily violent.
Yes.
However, I can be exposed to that stuff now, and it doesn't have an impact on me. Whereas before, I would go into a stress response and shut down. So, yeah, that also the result of doing all this neuroplasticity work.
I love that, Patti. So it's a powerful message and empowering kind of tool to have. So basically the same way the brain changes with traumatic experiences, it changes with positive experiences.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? The practice, the repetition of positive.
Absolutely. The repetition and understanding, right? Having the basic understanding that our brain does want to default to stress responses, and why it wants to do that, right? It wants to do that because it's trying to keep us alive.
Right. I love that. I love the understanding piece. Yeah, that's compassionate.
It's important, right? It's important for us to understand that, because it makes us easier to show ourselves love and compassion when that happens, and say, it's okay. I understand why you're responding this way. This is genuinely how I will talk to myself at times. I understand why you're reacting this way, but it's okay. It's okay to think differently. It's okay to shift your focus onto something else. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but it's okay. We're okay now.
Yeah, it's almost like talking to a child.
Well, you know what, Valeria, I'm firmly of the belief that most of us are there's lots of childlike parts of us that are in there, and we're just walking around in grown-up bodies.
Yeah, I agree. That helps me a lot too, to see humans that way. Yes.
Yes.
And myself. Myself first.
Absolutely, all of us.
Yes.
All of us.
Oh my God. Well, we started talking about off record about, I think you mentioned gratitude, being grateful for the things that had happened. So I would like to make a comment about that, I guess. I've been through a lot of trauma myself, a lot of horrible experiences as a child. Yes. And I'm not grateful for them, I have to say. Right. Well, my perspective, again, is spiritual. And I believe in if it is a belief system, is that it is, like you said, understand. I love that word. I use the word knowledge, but I guess they go together, right? Hand in hand.
Yes. Yep.
Is that realization, the understanding that everything is connected. So I don't think my parents would have done what they have done with that they did in the past if they had this understanding, if they had this profound realization that everything is connected, and we are basically by being violent, unkind to others, especially children or animal, innocent beings, then we are ignoring that truth that everything is connected. The essence is one. So I guess that's why now my path, it's for some reason, for that reason, I believe it's spiritual, because it's very clear to me that it's ignorance, the cause of a lot of the unnecessary suffering that I see, that I have seen in my own life, around me, and in the world right now.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with that. And I think the most powerful sort of intelligence for us to try to foster within ourselves and also within the world in general is emotional intelligence. Right?
I call it spiritual intelligence, but I guess it's the same thing.
Well, and I mean, I think, listen, I don't know where one stops and the other begins. Really, I think they're melded together. But if we had more people in positions of power, on all levels of our society, that healed their childhood trauma, in a really profound way, and wow, things would be very different, wouldn't they?
Oh my God, yes, Patti. So I do connect those two pieces, healing and spirituality. To me, like you said beautifully, we don't know when one begins, the other one starts, right? Well, one ends and the other one starts, right?
Right.
They are very much interconnected too, this movement between healing and spirituality. The more we heal, the more we see that truth, that everything is connected, that we are all connected.
Yes.
So going back to what you do and how you do it, let me see the guided. There's something that moving from a life of pain to a life that you love. That's what you are now, by not suppressing emotions anymore, being open to them. Well, you've been doing, it's a training, isn't it, Patti? It's a practice. Do you still need to engage in practices every day?
No, I'm at a point. I mean, the beautiful thing about this neuroplasticity work, Valeria, is that it tends to be a bit of a front-loaded process. When you clean up a lot of these traumas from your past, and in a way that you're actually rewiring what your brain is doing with those things, then the effect of that is cumulative, and your nervous system just tends to get healthier and healthier and healthier as you do that. And then you go from being in a chronic stress state to being in a more regulated nervous system state more of the time, and your health flourishes. You bring that creative part of your brain back online more of the time. You start to be able to focus your energy and your intention in different ways instead of just trying to fix yourself all the time.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
It's so when you get to that point, it becomes an exercise in living your life, right, and focusing your energy on what you'd like to create more of in your life. It doesn't mean that I'm a robot. It doesn't mean that I can't be impacted by things that are happening around me. Obviously, I still can, but I would describe it as the roller coaster. My life, I used to kind of see it as this big roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
One of the big scary ones.
Yes.
Now I feel like I'm in the kiddie section of the fair, and I'm riding the kiddie coaster.
Yes.
Right. So I don't have as far, when things don't impact me in the same way. So I don't have to work as hard to bring myself back into a better state. And I definitely have tools that I will use when I get upset by something, or I feel a little bit of anxiety or some worry around something. I have tools that I can use to bring myself back into a better state, which obviously then I'm able to problem solve more creatively, right? When you're in a better state. So it's definitely a process that is a little bit more labor intensive in the beginning and becomes less and less so as time goes on.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful to know. It sounds almost like a healing enlightenment type of a thing.
Yeah.
So
good way to describe it.
Yeah, that's what you kind of inspired the mind to think. So that it's not becoming desensitized and
No.
right, no feelings.
No.
You still have feelings and emotions.
No, I can still experience all of the emotions, right? I'm still a full human, and I want to have the full human experience, but I don't tend to get stuck in any of them, and I also don't wrap myself around them and cling to them either. Right? So much of our suffering happens by virtue of the fact that we wrestle with the difficult stuff, and then we cling to the really good stuff, right? And then invariably, when the good stuff changes, we suffer.
For sure. Wow, sounds
Right?
very spiritual to me again. Yes, desires, longing, all that.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So there's definitely a greater sense. I experience so much. I have so much stronger sense of being really whole and complete within myself now. And because of that, I'm able to, if I get pulled off the rails, I can pull myself back on, and which enables me to be able to help other people, to empower them to be able to do the same thing for themselves, which is what I love to do.
Right. How wonderful that is. It also makes me think about freedom and the idea of what freedom is.
Right.
How would you describe that in the same way, in a way?
Yeah,
Patti?
freedom. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's such a great question. I think my version of freedom is being able to focus on and do the things that I love and that are important to me, even if they are a little bit fear-inducing, even if it feels a little bit outside the comfort zone, because I know that it's going to be okay either way. Like, I can take the action step, I can move forward towards something that I want to do, because what's the worst case scenario? If it doesn't go the way that I want, well, I learned something and I brush myself off and I keep moving forward. That feels like freedom. Not letting my programming from my past dictate what my future is going to look like.
Yes.
Right? Not letting what other people think of me, or how they're judging what I'm doing, stop me from taking action. That feels like freedom.
Right. That really, it's amazing how it comes together, the common and shared ideas. When I listen to you and a lot of my guest therapists, they talk about what healing does, the state, the healing state of being. So automatically kind of matches the spiritual state of being.
Agreed.
So in the end, it might be that, like the way I see it, and we just talked about this, healing and spirituality, they're very much connected.
They are.
Right? The more we can clear. So it's not really about finding the truth, but getting rid of the lies, the programming.
Yeah, that people often ask me that, Valeria, like, what is it? Often people in this sort of milieu, the people that do this sort of work, I'll hear people use this sort of language like, I'm what is it that people say? I've, like, the best version of myself. I found myself again, right?
Yes.
That kind of language. And honestly, I don't love that language. Yeah. I feel like this, best version of me, this connected, curious, creative, beautiful, loving, spiritual part of me, this version of me, she's been in there the whole time, right? This part of me that's connected to something that's bigger than I am has been in there the whole time. But she got layered with a lot of trauma and a lot of disempowering beliefs, and it just was accumulating and layer after layer through the course of my life. And I feel like this neuroplasticity work and the journey I've been on has allowed me to kind of peel back all those layers, right? And just reveal this best version of me that's been in there the whole time, right? And now she gets to step forward and create the best possible version of the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Yes. Yeah, from my spiritual perspective, it's exactly the same way. Thank you for being very clear with that. I love the way you communicate the message so clearly. Is it for everyone, Patti? Like any age, even for children, per se, adolescents?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've worked with everyone from 8-year-olds up until 85-year-olds. Absolutely. Occasionally, I'll have clients that will come to me and say, "Can you work with my child?" And I'm absolutely willing to do that. Interestingly, though, often the most impactful thing you can do to help a child is to have the parents work on themselves.
Ah, makes so much sense.
It really does, right? Because
Yes.
when we model different behaviors and we're giving off a different vibration, that is going to impact our children powerfully. And it doesn't seem to matter whether they're 5 years old or 25 years old, you can still have a really positive, powerful impact on your child by doing your own work.
Right. How do you communicate that with parents?
Pretty much just like that.
Oh, wow. Straightforward.
I mean, basically, I think it's just having them understand that if they're carrying around a lot of emotional baggage, then they are not with any intention necessarily. That's clearly not what I'm suggesting here, but they are inadvertently parenting through the lens of that. Right. And that is going to impact their ability to be really present, to be really grounded, and be able to really let the children step into the full embodiment of who they're supposed to be if they're still parenting through the lens of their own trauma. So that's usually how I will suggest, and not everyone goes for it, but it is from my own experience, Valeria, when I cleared up so much of what I was carrying around with me, I could see the impact it had on everybody around me, including my children.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
In a really obvious way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, I love that piece too. and that's true, right, Patti? I heard that from somebody, one of my guests, the difference between intention and impact. Sometimes we have this great intention, but it is the way we deliver the message, the way we act that really makes the impact. And sometimes...
Yeah, and the energy that's behind it.
Yes, yes.
Is it coming from I'm trying to help my child from a desperate, I have my own unresolved wounds that I'm projecting onto them kind of way? Or is it coming from I've cleaned myself up. I feel pretty whole and I feel pretty complete within myself. So I can be genuinely, sustainably grounded and centered to allow my child to be who they are.
Yes. I love that you said that too. The energy behind, our actions, our intentions, our thoughts. Yes, it is.
It's powerful.
I agree. Wow. Do you meet your clients online and offline, in person?
Yes, both. I have clients all over the world that I work with virtually, as well as I have an in-person practice with the people who live in my community as well. And then I'm also part of a coaching program that we deliver this information, this nervous system education, and showing how to people how to put the practice of memory reconsolidation into play in their own lives. We have a group platform where we teach that in a programmatic way, which is really lovely. So there's multiple ways to engage in this work.
Yes. How beautiful.
Yeah.
That you're doing, you're very happily busy with this work, helping people. Thank you so much, Patti, for being you. Truly beautiful. Yes. So before we say goodbye for today, I have a few more questions for you, a technical one, and then I have a question that I usually ask all my guests. But before that, would you like to add anything that you left unsaid for today's conversation, Patti? A question that I didn't ask?
Well, Valeria, we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
We really did.
Yeah.
So no, I feel like hopefully I was able to give people a little bit of a sense of what's possible with this work, and that give some people maybe that if they're finding themselves feeling a bit like they're chasing their tail and not able to break out of some of these patterns, that there might be another way for them to get there. That's really what I was trying to give people, a sense of optimism and hope that there might be something out there that would work for them that they haven't already tried.
Right. And you being not just the messenger, but the message, that makes such a huge difference, because coming from your own experience,
indeed it is.
It can be felt. Yeah,
yes.
I mean, we trust that a lot more than just something that we have just read somewhere. So
I agree.
That's wonderful to know that you've been through it and this has been done. So my ending questions, I'll ask
Sure.
you, let me see. I'll ask this one. I have lots of ending questions here. I'll ask you this one. What do you love most about being in the human body or being a human?
Oh, wow. What a beautiful question. What do I love most about it? I love just, I love the big, glorious mess of it all. I love that. I love the highs. I love the lows. I love just the humanity of all of that. I lost my mother here about 5 years ago, and I had a very close, somewhat codependent relationship with her. And I was there with her when she passed away, and the whole concept of that prior to it happening was just horrific to me. But in that moment, it was horrific, and it was also incredibly beautiful, right? And I love that, and I love the moment when you see an incredible sunrise. And I love the moment when I hold a new baby for the first time. And I love all the learning and the helping everyone. I think it was John Kabat-Zinn who coined the phrase, the full catastrophe living. The idea that I love this great big full catastrophe life that I have.
Yeah, you can feel that way. That's for sure. It feels that way
Adventure,
sometimes.
right?
Yes, right.
Yes.
Yeah, we are here
Such
for
an adventure.
everything. Yeah, not just
right.
pieces of life, but
That's
a
right.
whole life. Beautifully said. Yeah, that's a beautiful message to reflect upon. Right. And my last question is this one: what 3 experiences you wish everyone to have before they die, before they lose the body?
Oh, wow. 3 specific experiences. Okay. Well, I think one of them would be the one that I mentioned earlier. I would love for everyone. I live in a very rural area in Nova Scotia in Canada. So I have a lot of nature around me, and I would love for everyone to have the opportunity to sit outside on a really dark, clear night and get the full experience of a fully big starry sky. Right, that would probably be the first one that comes to mind. Um, I I'd love for everyone to be able to experience the joy of having someone that they feel, that they're in a relationship with, that they feel genuinely safe and seen and heard with, that they can fully be themselves. I would love for everyone to have that experience. And I probably wouldn't be complete for me to answer that question without making some reference to animals, because I have a lot of them.
Yes.
And I know everyone has different preferences for different animals, but the experience of having an animal love you unconditionally, a dog or a cat. I also have a couple of donkeys that are just hilarious and beautiful and loving. So, being able to just be present with an animal and just let them love you unconditionally. I'd love for everyone to be able to have that experience as well.
Wow. Yeah. I was smiling here the whole time. Like, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. One after another. Thank you so much, Patti, for sharing these beautiful, timeless wisdom. That transcends it all.
Me.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for being you again and for what you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll be in touch again soon. Take good care of yourself for now.
Yes.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Patti Norris and her work, please visit getwiredforwellness.com and pattinorris.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.